Well, welcome back, of course, then to Cape Town here in Parliament, of course, just outside Parliament, where Finance Minister Tito Mboweni delivered his medium-term budget policy statement. We are continuing to get some reaction with regards to that statement and that speech, some sentiments around spending, expenditure, and how well that has been contained, perhaps, and how well he plans to contain that for future purposes. And, of course, Eskom and how that really sits with regards to South Africa's fiscus, a major sticking point, of course, then for the ratings agencies as well. The chief economist then as well from Alexander Forbes, Mr. Isaah Mhlanga, joins us here in studio as we get some reaction from him. Thank you so much for the time. Quickly, your thoughts as well. How did it fare for you, if you were perhaps to give it a rating out of 10, number one, and then also just your thoughts on perhaps key poignant issues that stuck out for you?
I think to give it a rating, it's more of what we were expecting, relative to what we got. We're expecting numbers to deteriorate, so we got what we were expecting, but slightly worse than what we were expecting. Obviously, growth expectations just bang on consensus, 0.5%, but if you look at the fiscal deficit, it rises to 6.8%. The debt trajectory goes to 70%. Even if you strip out the impact of Eskom, it still goes above 70% of GDP and it doesn't stabilize. I think that's the major concern, particularly for credit rating agencies. We will likely see that Moodys is going to change the outlook from stable to negative, and that is going to have an impact on markets, perhaps even on the currency, on bond yields. They've already increased 15 basis points as of now, which means it's going to be a lot difficult for South Africans out there.
And you know, you take the dire picture, you take the fact that you say Moodys may certainly change the outlook from stable to negative. It also then just means that we're headed on a downward trajectory and could get downgraded from there on in, and that means June next year, plus minus, you know, at the very latest anyway.
Absolutely. I think what would prevent a credit rating downgrade will be a bold reform process in terms of implementation. But if you read what we got today from the minister, it still blends, and obviously National Treasury is the accounting institution. It doesn't do the actual reform itself. The reforms have to be done by other departments, Department of Mineral Resources, you know, Department of Public Enterprises, as far as state-owned companies is concerned. And I think there is a sense that we're going to get delayed implementation of the Eskom turnaround plan, which means we're going to remain with the fiscal risk, but also with an economic risk in the economy. So if you're a credit rating agency, you look from February, what we were told, things have moved significantly for worse. What would you do? You are tempted to actually change the outlook, to say, guys, I'm giving you a warning, I'm changing the outlook to negative, do the reforms that are required, which you have tabled in the document that was released by the finance minister about a month ago, which contains all the reforms that are required, but it seems it's going to be slow to come.
So, as the president, if you're President Cyril Ramaphosa at this point in time, you're headed to an investment conference next week, you get, let's just say, you get downgraded by Moodys in terms of your outlook from stable to negative on Friday. What message do you head into next week with?
I think it's a matter of showing you're resolved by, announcing in terms of big action. One, we still need a CEO for Eskom. We hear from the budget speech that there's going to be an announcement, a change in the board positions. So the people that you put there and the mandate that you give them, but also insulating them from the political figures that exist, to make sure that they implement the right decisions to turn around Eskom, because we can say whatever we want. Eskom's debt ultimately South Africa's debt, and we have to deal with it one way or the other. And if we don't, it means the fiscal risk will remain with us.
Considering the deterioration in whether it be debt, whether it be in revenue collection as well, 53 billion rand less than was estimated in February, would you then say that we still have some sort of political desire to actually want to solve the problem? Because I feel that if that was the case, we would have been a whole lot more stern. We would have been a whole lot more ambitious in trying to curb the expenditure, cut out a whole lot of other things that perhaps are still sitting in our fiscus.
I think it's 53 billion for the current fiscal year. You have another 80 billion next year and 114 billion the year after in revenue shortfalls. So that is combined about 250 billion revenue shortfall, and the economy remains quite weak. Political desire, I think we are out of options. It's either we are going to be forced to make the decisions because the economy will approach a fiscal cliff. That's one option. Or we do them now when we still have the option to actually choose what we implement. Ultimately, the political leadership would have to take those decisions.
Yeah. Very finally, Isaah, thank you. Where it's easy to be negative, as I've said to a few of our guests as well, I want to get some positives from you as well with regards to our budget.
I think the one positive that National Treasury was very honest about where we find ourselves as a country. It's very difficult. The hard decisions have to be taken, cutting the wage bill. But there are avenues where we can actually insulate a part of society that is going to be impacted by the reforms. I think those avenues are well ventilated, which can say society can agree, let's do these things, but in the interim we're going to cushion those that are going to be impacted negatively. But if you look at, even in terms of wage growth for people that are employed by government, we still see real positive growth in their wages. That should be positive, even though it remains negative from a wage bill point of view.
Fantastic. Isaah Mhlanga, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, then the Executive Chief Economist then at Alexander Forbes, having joined us in studio to get some quick reaction and perhaps summarizing some of his thoughts with regards to the medium-term budget policy statement 2019 having been delivered then by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni not so long ago. We do conclude as well our presentation right here outside the steps of Parliament then as well, where we of course got that MTBPS announcement. Then the interesting facets here are that we certainly need to get a growth picture that perhaps is more intent on trying to resolve South Africa's three-pronged problems, of course, of inequality, joblessness that South Africa continues to have as well at this point in time, and how exactly we begin to fix the fiscus and ensure that it grows beyond the current status. Have we done enough, whether it be with regards to Eskom or any other SOE for that matter, realizing that SAA itself currently in its current state will not be able to make enough cash flow to warrant its existence as it currently stands? So how do we fix that as perhaps a big issue as well? So the SOEs need to find some sort of way to resolve themselves, whether it's in the form of leadership, whether it's in the form of just managing the costs that are certainly derived from these entities, is going to be quite critical as well. But also, we as citizens also need to play our part. The consideration that we continuously ask government to do everything for us perhaps is a notion that we need to put aside for a little bit and continue to ask ourselves what we can do for our country. I leave it right there, and that's where the buck stops indeed. It's back to studio right now. Thank you so much for joining us for our live broadcast right here outside the steps of Parliament for the Medium-Term Budget Policy Statement 2019.